Hello, I'm Cole Robbins, and this is ZNN Channel 8. Tonight we will be traveling back in time to an age of enlightenment and revolution, Reformation and Renaissance. This time period gave us many great minds and rulers. Learn this evening who they are and why they mattered. Let's first go to the age of Renaissance, where noble families retained power and dominated the emerging urban cities in Italy and all over Europe. Yet it is the individuals from this time that we remember most. Names like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, individuals whose works are now in museums and exhibits around the world. But how exactly did they do it?
The Renaissance provided wealthy families with even greater riches and growing political power. One of these examples was the Medici family. When Lorenzo Medici gained the prestige of political office, it started a chain reaction of power in which three of his descendants followed suit. The small power gained from the position was enough to start a steady flow of extra income into the Medici household. With this, Cosimo Medici was able to get the best education around in his time. By the time he had grown mature, two parties had formed in Italy out of the higher class and middle class. With his power and wealth, his family had supported the middle class. Cosimo moved away to avoid the conflict, yet when he did, the middle class rebelled and left power for the taking. Cosimo jumped on the opportunity and succeeded in not only maintaining power, but expanding it until the Medici family was well known in Italy. He founded a very large library, which helped to recognize and remember some of the classics from the Renaissance. His successors were not as successful, however, and the power eventually dissipated back into all of Italy. 100 years after Cosimo, Catherine de Medici was born, and she had more than a few struggles in her life, even though she did eventually become Queen of France. Our reporter Julia was able to speak with Her Majesty, and she had quite a lot to say.
Hello, Your Majesty. It's an honor to meet you and have you here at CNN.
Thank you so much, but the honor is all mine to be able to speak with you today.
How was your flight from France?
It was alright, I suppose, but in my time to travel by ship, I'm not sure I enjoyed being so high above ground.
I understand. My first flight on an airplane was scary too. Speaking of your time, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Not at all.
What did it feel like to grow up in a world of death? I mean, your parents died when you were so young, so you were raised by your grandmother, then by your aunt and cousins.
It was definitely hard on me and very lonely at times.
Surely that changes once you became queen, especially once you married Henry II at just 14 years old.
No, although we were married, he almost never talked to me and left me out of nearly everything.
Why? What happened?
We were married, yes, but he didn't allow me to participate in any political affairs. He always did favor that wretched Diane de Poitiers.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Please don't feel sorry for me. When my husband died, my son Francis received the throne and I helped rule with an iron grip. However, when my poor son left me, his younger brother Charles took his place as king, but he went to go join his brother and father up in heaven. I wish my sons had been able to live their full lives. I miss them dearly.
I can't imagine what you felt. That and with all the religious turmoil going on?
Yes, and looking back on my life, I regret some things I've done, like the harsh laws I once used on France. I feel as though I failed the crown, but then I think that if Henry had let me participate in politics all those years ago, when we were married, maybe things would have been different.
As you may already know, today we're going to be talking about education. During the Renaissance, people were taught education. People did actually know how to read and write, and sometimes much, much more. Girls and boys were separated into classes and by age/grade level. And girls were taught by women teachers, boys were taught by male teachers. Girls were taught embroidery, reading, writing, dancing, and how to play music. This was because they usually stayed at home. Girls didn't need many jobs because girls didn't need to know math or anything else. They took care of children and the house. Boys were taught arithmetic, religion, and natural science. Another main subject they were taught was geometry, music, astronomy, and they had to master both Latin and Greek. Both had jobs where they did advanced things. Even in the Renaissance period, there was a need for education, and it gave way to some great artwork that inspired the world for years and years.
Now, I'm going to be dragging you further back into the early 1300s, when the world was discovering new things and branching out into the unknown. During the Renaissance period, artists started doing new things that had never been seen before, and people came up with new ideas for art. There were many new techniques that artists started using that changed the way people looked at art back then. Something artists used that might surprise you was geometry. Artists like Giotto, Masaccio, and Donatello were around during the early Renaissance, from the 1400s to the 1475, and they used this method to paint pictures that were symmetrical.
Painters like Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael, who were around during High Renaissance, used perspective in their work. This technique gave printing an appearance that things went deeper into the canvas than they actually were. While these new ways of painting helped develop art, there were many other techniques that artists used. Light and dark is when painters use darker colors and mediums to make it look like a different time.
For example, a painter named Caravaggio used light and dark often in his work, as you can see here. Snoofaden was when artists blur the lines between things in a painting. The most famous example of this technique is when Leonardo da Vinci used it in the Mona Lisa. Earlier today, our reporter Julia Dietrich was able to speak with Mr. da Vinci about his work.
Hello, Dr. Da Vinci. Can I just say how amazing your work is?
Well, thank you, but please call me Leonardo.
I must say, I didn't expect to look like this. All the pictures depict you with a quite big beard.
Well, since I've returned to this world, I figured that I should cut off my beard and change to the style to fit into the world of this day and age.
I see. Very nice. Your sense of style is quite hip.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Leonardo, would you mind answering a few more questions?
Ask away.
How does it feel knowing your work is known worldwide and has been inspiring people for 100 years?
It feels amazing. When I started painting, I never dreamed that I could do anything like this.
What did you wish to accomplish when you first started painting?
I don't really know.
Well, what do you think when you finished the Mona Lisa? I mean, to create a masterpiece like that?
I can honestly say that the proudest moment in my life is when I finished the Mona Lisa.
The way you used sfumato was amazing.
You're too kind, but I personally think that it gives away the painting character. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
I use the sfumato to help bring out the woman in the painting, in the portrait, and I believe that the woman almost pops out in the painting.
One last technique that artists use was foreshortening. It's when you make lines shorter in a painting to make something look deeper, like perspective. And Pablo Uccello was an artist who was quite good at it.
That's all for today. Thank you for traveling back in time with us.
This has been Cole Robbins,
Holly Wilson, and Julia Dietrich, bringing you everything Renaissance.
See you next time. The Age of Reason, also known as the Enlightenment, was described as an epistemology, a method of thinking and knowing based on the presumption that the natural world is best understood through the use of close observation by the human faculties, coupled with reliance on reason. The universe was soon seen as a place of balance and order. This was what prompted mathematical revolution that was found in art, music, poetry, and architecture. The influence on the Enlightenment on America during the 18th century was profound. The increase in religious freedom along with the advances in arts and science carried over into modern society.
The Enlightenment created arts due to the Enlightenment's focus on reason over superstition. Because this was a period of learning, art and music became widely spread. Even more so with the middle class growing. More subject matter that could relate to the general public was explored by areas of study such as fine arts, philosophy, literature, and science.
Musicians have to depend on the support of the public, and as they get more dependent on the support, concerts become more popular and help supplement the incomes of the performer and composers.
The popularity of the concerts helped them attain a wider audience. George Handel epitomized this as he performed in London, highly public musical activities. Handel's operas and oratorios performed by him gained him a considerable amount of fame in London. Joseph Handel and Wolfgang Mozart, Viennese classical music styles, were very much known for being the most in line with the Enlightenment ideas.
Joseph Haydn was also a famous musician. He was from Austria. He made known him as musical prodigy. He could play the harp, violin, and could sing. Haydn was a music director. He led small orchestras. He sadly died in 1809. His legacy will live on forever.
Mozart showed prodigious ability from his earliest childhood. Already contempt on keyboard and violin, he composed from the age of 5 and performed before European royalty. At 17, he was engaged as a court musician in Salzburg, but grew restless and traveled in search of better position, always composing abundantly. While visiting Vienna in 1781, he was dismissed from his Salzburg position. He chose to stay in the capital where he achieved fame but little financial security. During his final years in Vienna, he composed many of his best-known symphonies, concertos, operas, and portions of the Requiem, which was largely unfinished at the time of his death. The circumstances of his early death may have been much mythologized. He was survived by his wife Constance and his 2 sons.
Music publications were immediately impacted by the desire to explore, record, and systematize knowledge. Dictionnaire de Musique, made by Jean-Jacques was the leading text in the 18th century. This text, widely available, gave quick, clear, and short definitions to the words such as genius and taste. The Enlightenment movement was clearly influenced by this text. Amateur musicians were beginning to be catered by music publishers, so they could put music out there that the public would understand and play.
A majority of the published works were for chamber ensembles, voice, and keyed instruments like the harpsichord and piano.
From the mid-century onward to the new trend, choral music was sung by amateur groups and was capitalized on by publishers. More and more people gained interest in reading and discussing music. Because of the increasing study of fine arts and access to published works that were amateur-friendly, the surfacing of music magazines, reviews, and critical works also begun during this time.
While the Enlightenment had its doubts and thoughts on religion, the scientific revolution brought its own perspective to the topic.
The scientific revolution was a new way of thinking about the natural world and how it came about. The scientific revolution was an important time because it sprung new beliefs and thoughts on how the world started. One big factor in the scientific revolution is religion. Two other factors that played a part were Isaac Newton and medicine.
Yes, the scientific revolution changed some people's belief in their religion and how the world was formed. People believed in science, facts, proof, rather than the holy truth. When they learned that the sun was the center of the universe rather than Earth, it questioned if some religions were true because some had said God put us in the center of the universe for a reason.
That is true. People were worried that their religion was wrong. So some people stopped believing and went to science because there's more proof. Also, the natural laws made people question the existence of a God or gods, and the role he played on the universe. They believed God could not just change things in his own hands, but that he made them the natural laws like gravity and magnets in the past along with all the matter in the world. They thought this because if God could do anything whenever he wanted, it would become unbalanced to the already proven laws.
These new ideas made people think about what was really true. Some people started to believe in science, some stayed with their religion. They thought if they can figure out nature's laws, that they would also be able to find out God's own laws. This started a new way of thinking for some people, thinking God created laws in the past and he can't change anything now, or that he can do as he pleases.
The scientific revolution changed the way of thinking and religion for people. They had new thoughts and views of the universe. Some of the scientists were arrested for their beliefs, but later released.
It was change that would last forever. Most people believe in religion or science.
Medicine, the thing that helped save people's lives and cure deadly diseases. Medicine in the 18th century was not very developed. They often used herbs to cure diseases.
Some of the more dangerous diseases were placed in different categories. Sometimes they used music to cure colds and sickness. Newton's law of the universe.
It all started when an apple fell on Sir Isaac Newton's head. From day one, Newton was a smart boy. One afternoon, he was sitting in his garden under his apple tree, and an apple fell on top of his head.
That's when Isaac Newton started thinking, why did that apple just fall on my head? After a few, Isaac started thinking of ways that could have happened. Gravity.
It took a total 20 years to come up with all three laws. In 1686, it was when Newton presented his laws.
Newton came up with three laws, motion laws. His first law was called the law of inertia. It is an object that rests will remain at rest unless acted on by an unbalanced force. An object in motion will stay in motion with the same speed in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force.
The second law was called acceleration proportional to force. It is. Acceleration is produced when a force acts on a mass. The greater the mass of the object being accelerated, the greater the amount of force is needed to accelerate the object.
Finally, Newton's last law was action and reaction. The third law states, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Kylie.
And we're a part of ZNN News.
We're going to talk about the scientific revolution that started in 1543 and ended in 1642.
Focusing on the topic, experimenting like a girl, and women in the scientific revolution.
The definition of the scientific revolution is the arrival of modern science during the early modern period when developments in math, physics, astronomy, biology, and chemistry transformed views of society and nature.
Today we have a group of people here to discuss how women were involved in the scientific revolution.
Here with us today is Camila Syed, Joshelina Pirelli, and Denise Wisman.
Throughout this segment, Camila will be asking Denise and Joshelina questions about women in the scientific revolution and their experiments.
Now to Camila with the questions for Denise and Joshelina.
Welcome, ladies, to CNN. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yes, we're very excited and glad to be answering these questions you have for us.
So how do you feel about the women, how they were not regarded the same as men?
Well, Camille, the way men saw it was women were disregarding their duties as well.
I feel like women were actually just as good as men with making their own discoveries and experiments, don't you think?
Yes, I do. Women made very many breakthroughs, one even finding a cure for malaria.
So you see, women were just as good as men in the scientific revolution.
So why is it that men saw women as nothing more than just kitchen slaves?
It was very common for women to be a part of this area of work, so men saw it as a bad thing. As previous spoken, men saw this as women disregarding their duties, thus even their families would shun them.
Families would try to cure the woman by having her do women duties. Maria Agassi, for example, was diagnosed with a disease that caused her to study excessively. The doctor prescribed her horseback riding and dancing. But the truly amazing part of her was, by the age of 11, she could speak 7 different languages.
Wow, that's amazing. 7 languages, you said?
Emily Du Chatelet learned 7 languages by 12 years old as well.
That's outstanding. So how do you both personally feel on women having more power during the scientific revolution?
I believe women played a huge role in the scientific revolution. I think they were a huge part of the scientific revolution because they overcame not being able to work and achieve what men do. The normal woman during the scientific revolution was to do housework, such as clean clothes, cook meals, and take care of children. But women decided to take a different route. Women like Emily Du Chatelet had the biggest impact because they were well educated and knew about science and performed scientific research. These women were just as good as men, if not better, and that's why I believe women had a huge role in the scientific revolution.
I think women in the scientific revolution are as good as men. I feel they have just as good working skills as men. Women in the scientific revolution were very important because they changed history. I think they should have been more women working during the scientific revolution. I believe they should have had more women because they are more creative and they can do a lot for the scientific revolution. I think that women being in the scientific revolution is a good thing. I see it as there being more ideas. Let me expand. You see, men have their own ideas. On top of that, we have women putting their ideas into the mix, and it helps too. Just look how this movement changed history. It was the start of something big, allowing women to participate in the same things as men.
Women have proved that they were just as good as men. Now, some were afraid of what others would think, or that their work would be rejected because it was by a woman, but I says it's not how they should have approached the situation. I regard the ones who were able to stand up and say, hey, this is my work. I'm a woman and I'm hard work for these things.
Plus, I think once 1 or 2 women started to do this, other women saw that, hey, they're got no work out there, so can I. This lead to a revolution inside of the revolution of women in the scientific revolution.
In conclusion, women played a huge role in the scientific revolution. They changed history by showing that women are capable of doing what a man can do. These women were also really smart. They strive for an education and to be able to learn and work just as good, if not better, than a man. All in all, women played a huge role in the scientific revolution.
Medicine, the thing that helps save people's lives and cure deadly diseases. Medicine in the 18th century was not very developed. They often used herbs and to cure diseases. Medicine was not easy to come by and was very expensive and it took time to affect on serious colds and diseases. As time went on, sometimes the medicine would work and on other occasions the patient would die.
Some of the more dangerous diseases were placed in different categories. Sometimes they used music to cure colds and sickness. During this time period, there wasn't very many doctors, and they often died or got sick from their patients. When the patients had serious diseases, it was hard to cure and help them. The more serious the disease, the harder it was to find the medicine and find an effective cure.
Okay, so let's begin. So Martin Luther had a wife named Katharina von Bora. Why do you think he had 6 children with this woman?
Well, he loved her. That is the most obvious reason. Well, the second is because he believed that marriage, you should marry because you love the person that you're going to be with, rather than for unification. Like the royal families or most other families, when they marry, they do it for an alliance so that when hard times come ahead, they can work together and collaborate for the better good of themselves and their allies to improve their overall well-being.
Okay. Why do you think Martin Luther had such an influence on Northern and Eastern Europe?
That one is a little harder to explain. But I believe it was because he wanted to remind folk about the power and efficiency of indulgences that proved that the Pope was a fraud by lying to the people about the sale and raising funds for the church. So Martin Luther at the time decided to tell all the true Christians what the meaning of Christianity really means by posting the 95 Theses.
Okay. Martin Luther's father owned a copper mine. Do you think he could have owned or had the same business as his father?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because he could use those sales to pay his landlord or to buy things for his family. No, also because he was not interested in the copper mine, and it was said he left it to find some way to make profit for himself.
Okay, thank you, Chase, for your input. This has been Seamus Hancock. Back to you, Cole.
Thank you.
Today, we will be having an opinionated discussion coming from Braxton Sims and Nick Kolochar. Henry VIII was born on June 28, 1491 in the Palace of Placenta, Greenwich, United Kingdom. Henry VIII played a critical role in the English Reformation, but was actually famously known for having 6 wives.
Henry VIII was also famous for turning his country into a Protestant nation. He declared himself head of the Church of England in 1534. Henry VIII died on January 28, 1547. Some people even believe that he died from a sexually transmitted disease called syphilis. What's your opinion?
In my opinion, I think he could have died from syphilis from all the wives he had. Like, I can see why he could have got it and killed his current wife who gave it to him. But I can also see that he could have died from old age. Those are the only things which I believe that he died from.
First, Braxton, Henry VIII had 6 wives, some of which he slaughtered. Are you aware of this, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm aware Henry VIII had 6 wives, and the ones he slaughtered. There's a saying of his wives in order. Divorce beheaded died, divorce beheaded survived. I don't think it's right to go and kill your wives even if you're a king. That's just psychotic, selfish, and mean.
Although slaughtering his wives wasn't right to us, I believe we should not criticize him now, but because it could have been what people in those days thought was right.
Now, Braxton, since you've been in investigative journalism for a few years and have studied the topic, I would assume that you know the names and how many children he's had.
Yes, he has had 3 kids. Mary the First by Catherine of Aragon, Elizabeth the First of England by Anne Boleyn, Edward the Sixth of England by Jane Seymour. Those are all the kids that lived and didn't die shortly after birth.
Mary Tudor was his daughter by Catherine of Aragon. She was very successful and killed and imprisoned many people just like her father and was later given the name Bloody Mary.
Okay, and Braxton, on a personal level, despite all of the slaughters and how he's mistreated all of his wives, he's also known for being the King of England. Do you think he deserves this title?
With his military experience, he is a great leader. Yes, he did slaughter his wives, but he also helped his country.
However, I don't believe that he deserved this little title because I feel since he is mostly known for killing his wives and mistreating them, that all of the other things that he's done most have not been beneficial or important.
Braxton, give us a little background information on Henry's life before and or after he became King of England.
Well, Henry's scholarly interests included writing both books and music, and he was a lavish patron of the arts. He was an accomplished player of many instruments and a composer.
And was the author of the best-selling book. It went through some 20 editions in England and Europe, attacking Martin Luther and supporting the Roman Catholic Church. In 1521, Henry was given the title Defender of the Faith by the Pope.
Okay, now what are some of his achievements that made him successful?
Some military achievements are he mounted the biggest invasion of France since the reign of King Henry V. The Mary Rose was built in 1509 through 1511 as the first English gunship.
He was also renewed warfare with France and Scotland in 1542 and French landing on the English coast between 1545 and 1546, which were defeated.
These are some very good answers. I can tell that this topic really interested you. Why is that? What about Henry VIII gave you the aspiration to learn it?
The fact that he got famous for murdering his wives and put his country in the Reformation.
This topic also interests me because he murdered and mistreated some of his wives and still remained the king of England, but only having 3 children.
I would have to agree with you there, Braxton and Nick. Last question. Would you disagree with and or agree with in the course of Henry VIII's action back when he was the King of England?
I agree with his military leadership and becoming king. He was right for putting his country in the Reformation. People still dishonor him because of what he did to his wives.
I disagree with that fact that he slaughtered his wives and mistreated them rather than improving things for his country.
It looks like we've run out of time. Now let's turn it over to reporter Seamus Hancock, who is with Martin Luther expert Chase Parker, another man that played a major role in the Reformation. Who would have known that there could be so many different intelligent ideas and works of art during this period? I hope that this broadcast taught you something about the beauty of these times of Renaissance and Enlightenment, and the power of ideas during the Reformation and Revolution. We thank you for tuning in. This has been Cole Robbins reporting from Channel 8 with ZNN News.